Alright, I'm going to give a quick try at clarifying the differences in how a few pieces of functionality that we're going over work and the differences between them. I had some folks who were a little confused. We haven't gotten to layer masks yet, but we've looked a little bit at clipping masks and clipping paths. I'm going to kind of look at all three of them at the same time because these are really all ways in which we can isolate information in our photographs, and for different purposes. Some of them for exterior purposes, programs outside of the Adobe family, and then others for use with other Adobe products or simply just in Photoshop itself. So let's take a quick look here. First, I'm going to look at layer masks and clipping masks, and I have a ridiculous photo here that I'm going to use for demonstration purposes, not because I think it actually looks good. And I'm going to go over differences, well, clipping masks and layer masks first. To mask something means that you're hiding a portion of it. You're masking a part of it away. You're allowing some of it to be visible and some of it will be invisible. And the benefit for us is that this is non-destructive. We can hide portions of a layer that we don't want without actually deleting it. So if we decide we want to get that back, we can get that back. It's no problem. Let's start with a layer mask, and then we'll move to a clipping mask and look at the differences. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to make a layer mask for this layer so that this young man, my son, shows through the image. So the background will change from this to that sunset sky. Not necessarily the best application, but for purposes of demonstration, it'll have to do for us. Now, let's look at just the basic premise of a layer mask at first. Layer mask, I'm going to bring that back. This is how we can create a layer mask. Down here at the bottom it says add a layer mask. And if we click, now you can see there's an extra thumbnail on layer 1. Layer masks are simply a painted addition to our image layer that determines which areas of that image layer are going to be visible. Right now, this layer mask is completely white and everything is visible. We have this little hint that we use to try and help us remember what color to paint when we're using layer masks. And our little hint is black conceals, white reveals. So the layer mask is 100% white, so the image is 100% revealed. If I want to conceal a portion of it, I paint with black. So I have my paintbrush and my foreground color is black. If I paint, I reveal the layer below because I am concealing the sunset image here. So now the background layer is showing through layer 1 in that portion where I've painted. Okay? So, and it's really that simple, and the great thing here is, of course, non-destructive. So if I decide, yeah, I don't want to do that, I can just switch my foreground background color and paint white. It goes away. You can see in the layers panel, I'll let go here, that it's updated. It's all white again. So black, white, no problem. And then of course, there's all kinds of other pieces of functionality that you're going to learn about. One of which that I like to use, I'm actually going to go back a little bit further here, get rid of the layer mask. I like to have selections work as my layer mask. So I'll actually make a selection. In this case, I'll just use the background. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about how clean it is. It's not going to be perfect because I'm just trying to do this as quickly as possible. Okay, so I now have selected the background, and I'm going to go to layer 1. I'm going to tell it I want to create a layer mask, and it's going to use the selection that I had as the basis for the layer mask. immediately. It just recognizes that that selection becomes the layer mask. So now you can see there he is in the foreground, and of course it looks completely natural, not digitally edited at all. So that's the basics of a layer mask. Now let's look at a clipping mask. Okay, a clipping mask is actually a very similar premise to a layer mask, but instead of adding a layer mask, we're going to use another layer as the mask. Now we can use whatever we'd like for this. It can be a shape. You'll learn to do that in the book. It can be another image. It can be text. And this text I'm going to use, or this example, I'm going to use text. So I've grabbed my text tool. I'm going to click. And I'm going to write big D. And then I'm going to increase the size of it. And make it a lot larger. Oh, it'd help if it actually said big. And let's make it something thick that we really can see. As much as I don't like it, let's use impact, because that's pretty nice, easy to see. And just make it real big. Okay, I'm going to place it where I'd like to place it, and then I can use this as a clipping mask. Now, the weird thing about the clipping mask is that the clipping mask actually has to be below. So I'm going to move this big D below. Okay, the layer that is being used as the mask actually appears below the layer that it is masking. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold Alt on the keyboard and see how my cursor changes. If I hold Alt, I get that little double circle there with the arrow. That's indicating that if I click, I'm going to get a clipping mask. So I click, and now I have a clipping mask. And this layer is now determining what portions of the layer above it, indicated with the little arrow here, are visible. And this is completely editable as well. So very, very similar to our layer mask. So I could actually, to show you the editability, let's actually just double click here, and I'll do, he goes by Tom for some reason, spelled with an N. He's a Step Brothers fan. So Tom. And that's just a terrible abuse of Photoshop. This is not what we should be using it for, but hopefully you're getting the picture here of what's possible. So that's layer masks and clipping masks. Now let's look at clipping paths. Layer masks and clipping masks, these are an internal Adobe piece of functionality. We can use these in Photoshop to isolate areas of a photograph, make things display the way we'd like. And we can also put a native Photoshop file directly into InDesign, directly into Illustrator, and some of the programs are even going to recognize the layers. In InDesign you can actually open the layers of a Photoshop file and toggle the visibility of the layers. Obviously not every program is going to accept a PSD, a Photoshop file. For that, if we want to have transparency, we have to do something else. We have to create another type of format. One format that we have available to us that we can create transparency is an EPS, and we're going to use the clipping mask as a way to create that transparency. So the clipping path is a path that is set to indicate transparency. Okay, so I'm going to grab my pen tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a path that indicates the boundary of where I want the image to be visible or invisible. So visible or clipped. That's why it's a clipping mask. It's clipping the information away. So I'm just going to start here at the top, and when you do this project, I expect you to be much cleaner than this for the purposes of this demo. I'm going to move quickly so that we can be done. I want you to learn how to use this pen tool so that you're using the little curved handles and whatnot. And I'm actually gonna cut it off here because I don't want to waste too much of our time, I'll actually come out here and take the top of this Z, even though I really don't want it. Just in the interest of time. Okay, and then you see how the circle comes up, that's indicating it's going to close the path. If I go to my paths panel, I can see the path there. Now that I have that path completed, if I actually click inside here on the interior areas, it will add that. And you can see what is inside of the path and outside of the path by the gray. The gray is outside, the white's inside. You can actually see those little tiny inside areas. Okay, so there are a few steps here when you're using an EPS for a clipping mask, and this is something I gave you instructions for, but just so you're clear, the first thing we do, we create the path with the pen tool. The second thing we do is we have to name the path. The work path is just this default name functionality that Photoshop has. If we want to use the path, we actually have to name the path. So I'm just going to double click, tell it, and path one is fine. Click on path 1. Now we declare that path a clipping path. Also done in the paths panel. I'm going to click on the flyout menu, tell it that I want a clipping path. There's only one path, so it's either none or path 1. And then I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to click OK. All right. So I've now set that as a clipping path. Now I have to save it as another file format. This is a JPEG. That's not going to work. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. Photoshop EPS. There's a couple of different types of EPSs here. This is the one you want, Photoshop EPS, not DCS1 or 2. And I actually have a couple here. I'm just going to save over the top of one of them. You do want the 8 bits per pixel TIFF preview. Okay. And now to test and see how this worked out, I'm going to go into my PowerPoint presentation. So here in PowerPoint, obviously PowerPoint's not going to take a PSD, so what we want is that EPS. I'm going to go to Insert, Picture, and then it's already coming up to my digital photography presentations week 10, which is where I have that saved, and you can see, well, actually, it might not be today's date when you see this. So I'm going to click, tell it I want to insert, and there we go. The clipping path that we created dictates which portions of this illustration are going to show through and which portions are going to be invisible. And so that's a purely exterior purpose, the clipping path there. There are programs that are not going to accept Adobe Photoshop file formats, so you have to have other tools in your arsenal to take care of designs outside of Adobe family products. So there we go. I hope that helps clear up the differences and the different purposes of layer masks, clipping masks, and clipping paths.